Ever thought about becoming a church consultant? 3 reasons you should, and one that you shouldn't today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu. A.J., I missed you last week on the podcast. Glad to be back in the old saddle recording with you this week, my friend.
We both have had a lot of travel going on. You had a good run last week, getting several things knocked out with some churches. So that was good, and I am glad to have you back. It's always weird working without a net, and I don't often call you Annette, but in this episode,
my name is not Annette, and don't call me Shirley. So no, I'm glad to be back. Worth mentioning here at the top of the episode, it's relevant to today's episode topic, I guess. But we do have coming up April 8th through the 10th a guide certification event. The location of that has changed. So when we announced this originally, it was going to be in Fort Worth. It's actually going to be happening in Tennessee, in my neck of the woods. So folks who want to go through the certification process can attend in person. We would love for you to attend in person. You may also attend on Zoom if you don't want to make the trip here to Tennessee. Although we would love for you to be here. It's really, I think, a better experience if you can be in person and have that.
I would say recommended. Yeah, recommended.
Yeah, highly recommended. Yeah, we're not going to force it on you. Highly recommended if you can get here.
East Tennessee, Bristol, Tennessee. If you want to put it into the old internet to figure out your travel arrangements, Bristol, Tri-Cities Airport.
Tri-Cities Airport. Yeah, we're a brief drive from I'd say like 90 minutes from Asheville, North Carolina. If you wanted to fly in there, fly into Tri-Cities Airport, which is 15 minutes away.
Yeah, bring your family. Go to Dollywood. Go see.
That's right. Yeah, fly into Knoxville and go to Dollywood.
Gatlinburg.
Yeah, like the Appalachians. The Blue Ridge Mountains.
Yeah, it's a good place. It's a good place to visit. It's a good place to live.
Good place to live. There's a sign that says so.
That's right.
So, all that to say, so today, though, this episode today, then you might think, is this just then going to be an episode that is a promotion for this certification? Not really. I mean, certainly, if you get to the end of this episode and you go, "Wow, this resonates with me," we'd love for you to go through our certification process. But it's really to answer a common question that I get. I think that almost every church I go to, I'll encounter someone maybe on the strategic leadership team or maybe the pastor himself who will say, "Man, how did you get into doing what you're doing? And what's that like? What is that? How does one do that?" And so in fact, I just had an email this week from someone who said, "Man, doing the kind of work you're doing sounds like a dream job to me." So I thought it would be good. We've done an episode like this, I think, a couple of years ago. It's been a while, so I thought we would circle back around to the topic and kind of give you 3 reasons why you should want to be a church consultant, and 1 big reason why you shouldn't. And we're going to explore that today.
All right, let's do it.
There you go. There's the introduction.
So the first reason that you should, especially if you've ever had that thought, like, can I use my gifts or my skills to work with churches? Seeing churches transform is an amazing thing to get to witness as a church consultant. For our purposes, you'll hear us refer to that as guides. We call ourselves guides, Malfers Group certified guides, or what we certified people in to do. But yeah, seeing churches transform, it's in our line of work. It's not exclusive to churches that are plateaued or declining, but that is the majority.
Mhm.
We do sometimes work with churches that are actually doing pretty well and they're healthy, and they're looking more for like some fine tuning, maybe some some next level structure. But for the most part, it's churches that aren't necessarily feeling and appearing healthy at that point in time. And so the opportunity for transformation is great
Mhm.
and frequent. And
Yeah.
so that, that's really, I think that your first point here, Scott, is one of the big ones for us. Because, having a heart for the church, capital C global church, and wanting to see every, part of the body function in its greatest capacity it's a desire of the heart. And so to get to meet these people, these leaders that have that desire as well, that want to maximize what they do and be effective in the kingdom, uh, that's the draw. And then you work through the weeds with them and you see what happens out on the other side, be it small, be it significant, it's still a celebration. And so that's the fun of it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have I'm not old enough yet to have grandkids. I got children. I don't have grandchildren. But so this is maybe a weird analogy, but like if you are a person who has grandchildren and maybe you live a little bit away from your grandkids, you don't live down the street from them. Maybe you live a couple states over, and so you only kind of get to see them on major holidays, and birthdays and things like that. When you see those kids, you go, wow, he's grown so much, he's gotten so tall. You see how much they've changed and how much they've grown. And there's something a little bit like that in being a guide when you're working with a church. You come in these strategic moments and you're helping them through particular problems and solve particular challenges. And then, as you go along, you kind of hit these different various checkpoints along the way, and you're seeing them make progress. But then you can kind of hit these sort of almost milestone moments, maybe 6 months in, or 9 months in, or a year later, or 2 years later, as you continue to be connected with them, or even just see a window into their world on social media, um, and to go, wow, look how far you've come. Um, I I was meeting with a pastor actually just a couple weeks ago, um, and we were having a conversation. He was getting a little discouraged about some things that haven't happened yet that we had put in the plan that haven't fully come to fruition yet. But then we just started going through all the things that have happened, and I just said, hey man, if I had told you 2 years ago that this would be your situation, would you even have believed me?
Yeah.
And he was like, I hadn't thought about it that way, you know. And it's moments like that, and it's stories like that, church, and dozens of other churches I can think of that I've worked with over the years. That's the thing. That's like the reward mechanism. If you're
Mm.
wondering what's the thing that keeps you doing it, it's that. Because otherwise, like anything, there's a lot of kind of repetitive work. There's a lot of, hey, you got to sit and you got to write this report and you got to send this email and you got to have this, you know, client call, and you've got to, like, there's a lot of that. It's a lot of sitting in an airport. It's a lot of all of those things. And if you don't have that real desire to see churches transform, you probably wouldn't enjoy this work. But if that is something that really resonates with you, to me, it's a reason to do it. If you like seeing things go from good to great, or from bad to good, or from conflict to calm, any of things if you like seeing those transformation things happen, um, this is a pretty cool thing to do, to get to kind of have a front row seat to those transformation moments.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. The second reason that it's a great thing to do is that you get to flex your entrepreneurial problem solving skills. So many
Hmm.
people listening right now are like, my what? My who? That you would not be a good fit for this then, likely. But yeah, for those of you that you like sinking your teeth into a challenge, um, and innovating new ideas, encouraging people, working through, a team environment, to get consensus around an idea, inspiration for a better tomorrow, and then solving problems. This is for me, and I know for you too, Scott. I love sinking my teeth into a problem. Yeah, I mean, um, and a lot of people are like this. Somebody, tells you they've got an issue, and immediately the wheels are just cranking. Like,
Hmm.
okay, let's give me some details. Let's talk about what exactly is going on. How did this happen? What's that situation? And you're just immediately thinking, how can I solve this? Um,
Yeah.
that's how my brain is constantly operating. Um, and so now there are interpersonal skills necessary, for
Hmm.
this. It's not just some benign, sterile environment. There's real people and there's emotions involved. But you have to be the person that can, self-motivate, self-start, work through challenges, and just deal with the real nuts and bolts, the real world issues that are happening, and help these leaders and these church teams come up with, good solutions for the future. But this, I think this reason that you noted here, Scott, it really is the meat of the work.
Yeah. And I would say if you don't have that sort of entrepreneurial bend to you, because the whole work is that it's not just certainly when you're working with a church, you have to like new dynamics, new situations, new problems, new challenges, but also the work of building your consulting ministry is
Yeah,
also entrepreneurial.
yeah,
Like, how could I
that's a whole other
communicate what I
piece.
what I do? And we're going to talk more about this
Yeah.
in a little bit, but um, how do I communicate what I do, How do I become more effective, and how do I become more confident when I'm speaking with a church and kind of discussing and telling them how this will actually help them? How do I have conversations about, hey, there are costs associated with these things? Because while we're ministry minded and our heart isn't at all a financial, our motivation is not a financial one. Everything costs money. It costs you takes money for you to get to that church. Even if you didn't make a dime, it would still cost you something to get there. And so that can be hard, especially if you have a ministry background. That's what you're coming from, to learn how to have those that's was one of the hardest things for me personally coming into this, was how do I have money conversations with churches?
Mm.
And developing that confidence. But also in the work itself, like you were talking about, AJ, it's it, you have to be able to have good, really active listening skills. And my
Mhm.
wife would probably roll her eyes and go, "Where are these at home?" Because
You listen to the churches. Why don't you listen to
yeah,
me?
like you have good active listening skills. Like, surprisingly, yeah. But you've got to keep like that. You're keeping the whole process in view,
Hmm.
and then you're hearing something and you're trying to forecast how that's going to fit in with this other challenge down the road, and you are sorting things in your mind. I don't know how to describe this, AJ, but like the more churches you work with, the more you start to realize that every church is special, but they're not that unique. The problems kind of sort into categories. You want to have an open mind because occasionally you'll encounter a situation you're like, "Oh, I've not dealt with this before." So you don't want to just jump to conclusions and assumptions.
Hmm.
At the same time, you it's helpful for you to start to go, okay, I've seen this pattern of a problem before, and this kind of solution generally works. So not every church is exactly the same, but churches generally have some similarities, and they're more similar than they are different. We'll talk about that here a little bit too. But um and I would just say you've got to have like you need to be a curious person. I think that's important.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite things often is the meals that we have, where I get to just sit across from leaders and ask them questions, not so even just as much about the church, but about their lives and their experiences, and what's the history of this church and how did it come to be? And, you know, um, All that stuff. You like, if you can stay curious and ask good questions, even in the non-work times during sort of the break times, you'll learn a lot, and it will make you better at what you do. So one of the ironies, I think, AJ, and I'm sorry, I know I've been going on here for a little bit, but I've done this ministry longer than I was in any other position in full-time staff ministry. I had stints 4 years, 5 years, at a couple of different places, but I've been doing this as full-time ministry for this will be my ninth year, I think. Um, and yet it feels like 5 minutes ago. And I think part of it is every day, every situation, there's something different, and it kind of keeps my attention.
Hmm.
And I have that kind of entrepreneurial itch, and it scratches that so that I'm not ever going, gosh, I'm getting bored doing this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
It always stays fresh. Yeah.
I don't know if you feel that way, but like it doesn't feel like it's been. I know you've been doing this longer than I have, but it doesn't feel like it's been
Yeah.
as long as it's been.
Yeah,
It
no, it does. It is surprising that so many years have passed. Yeah, I mean, I think it is because of what you're saying. Yeah, you're always starting something new. You're always
always.
meeting somebody new, beginning a conversation. Might turn into a long relationship, might not. Um, yeah, that's totally what I love about it too. Yeah, my general bent is not to be like doing the same thing all the time, over and over and over again. Though we repeat the same process, as you said, every church is different. Um, every church is not as unique as they think they are. There is more similarities than there are differences amongst churches. But everyone does have their own culture and personality and unique things about it. And so, yeah, it's
Mhm.
fun learning that. I mean, 2 weeks ago, over on our lunch break, I sat across from an entomologist. Like, when am I ever going to have lunch with an entomologist and talk about bees?
Bugs.
Bugs,
This,
yeah, yeah. A
okay.
bug doctor. They don't,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, they study them.
Hmm.
But that was fun. I mean, you
Yeah,
just
that
never know
is
who
fun.
you're going to meet. Who's going to be on
Yeah,
that
a
church
church that
team?
we both worked with. I don't know if you knew this, but one of the guys, I won't mention the name of the church, but one of the guys who was on their leadership team was a geologist,
Yeah.
professor of
Oh, I'd be
geology.
all into that too. Yeah.
Yeah. You met him, you may not have known that
Oh,
that's what he was, but
okay. Yeah, you'll have to tell me after this who
yeah, yeah, yeah.
who the geologist was that I know and didn't know
Yeah.
I knew.
Yeah. We had
Yeah.
a
So,
really interesting conversation about oil and natural gas.
oh, that's cool.
I was like, tell me the truth. How much oil do we have? He was like, hundreds of years. He's like, we have so many years. He's he's like, we're good.
All right. Good to know. That'll be
Yeah.
another episode we'll talk about. We'll get it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that is the fun stuff. That's the fun stuff that we enjoy. The things that are just always a new challenge, always a new day, and
Yeah.
learning, constantly learning,
Mhm.
honing skills. Um,
And
yeah,
seeing new places like that might, if you're a homebody, you would not like this.
yeah.
You, AJ and I both, I think, have this. We both fly on American Airlines. Um, and
As
so
as often as
as
we can.
as often as we can. And so I think we both have this, if ever there's not a flight scheduled, in our app coming
Mm,
up,
that would
it
feel
feels a
weird.
little bit, it's like, oh, I've had a couple, not many moments, but a couple of moments like that where there's not something booked
Yeah.
coming up, in the next couple of weeks or whatever. And I start to go, ugh. Um, my wife will even say, because she can tell, she's like, don't worry, you've got a trip coming up next week. You'll be okay. And I'm not gone long. Like that, maybe that would be another thing. Sorry, I know this is going on. Another question. I think the number one question I get is, how does that work with your family? Like, are they
Yeah.
not?
I get that a lot too. How much are you away from home? Hmm.
Yeah, and it's not. I am away from home, and like recently, the last few weeks, I've been gone way too much, like way more than I want to be gone. But typically, I'm gone maybe twice a month, um, 2 weekends, like a Friday, leave on Friday morning, come home Sunday evening, and then I'm home. The rest of the time, I'm home. That would be typical. it's atypical for me to be gone more than that. I have been lately, and I don't love that. That that's not normal. What's normal is a couple of times a month. So,
Mhm.
as we'll talk about in a minute, getting even to that point is a little bit hard. But I guess what I'd say is yes, you have to be okay with kind of breaks from home, going places, seeing things. And I'm not going to say that that isn't sometimes hard, AJ. Sometimes it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Sometimes you go,
Hmm.
oh man, because I've missed some of my daughter's basketball games and things like that. But it's about doing your best to make priority and go, I'm not going to miss this. This is my wife's birthday, or this is my kid's birthday weekend, or my daughter has a dance recital. I'm not going to miss that. Like, you just have to prioritize and do your best, but you also have to kind of want to be gone some. Does
Yeah,
that make any sense?
yeah. There's a
That's
lot of people that enjoy traveling, yeah, and seeing new places, and you and I are two of them. So
Yeah.
for
You
sure.
have to want to do that. You can't like begrudgingly be doing the travel. You'll be miserable.
Yeah,
That's how you feel.
right. Yeah, embrace the travel. Okay, so the first reason to be a church consultant, seeing churches transform. Awesome. The second one, being able to use these skills that you hopefully possess in problem solving and entrepreneurship. The
And
third
like
reason,
change, just being liking change and movement and all those things.
yeah,
So
right, right,
that
yeah,
was a lot of things kind of combined into a category, but hopefully we've painted the picture of the kind of like personality type and skill set you have to have. Other skill sets don't enjoy this to the same degree, I don't think.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Um, Networking, got to be a good networker. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
kind of get into that too here coming up. Third reason to be a church consultant, just the deepening love for the church. This might be a little similar to the first point, but looking at the church more in like the big picture, like from a
Yeah.
global point of view, I think is important. Um, and I think once you have that perspective, like we're all united in Christ, in under the mandate of the Great Commission. And then, so I think whenever we take that global point of view, like to the ends of the earth point of view, and you then see how every church matters.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't have too many, obviously, because there's a lot of people that don't know the Lord. So we don't that we have not completed the task. There's work to be done. And if you care about that, if that is a motivator for you, I mean, to take these Great Commission passages literally and with responsibility, um, then you want to see that next church be able to find success, to be greater than
Mhm.
they are today.
Yeah.
And I think that's for me. I mean, the overall love for the church and wanting the church to do what Jesus has commanded us to do. Then
Mhm.
that's a point of excitement. I would also say that's a point for me. It's like anticipation, kind of the unknown. Like, here's this church. They haven't really been, they're not outward focused. They're not really strategizing to make disciples. It's not their primary focus. But wow, what potential they have. So the anticipation of what God will do amongst their team members and then amongst their church and the transformation of their city. Um, I go into every church seeing it for the potential that they have for the kingdom.
Mhm.
And so I think that's another aspect of this. So I think you have to have a really big picture focus and then
Mhm.
be able to get very close. I mean, zoom in then to this particular church you're working with. Where do
Yeah.
they fit into the kingdom, and what can God do in and through them? So that's another piece that I really like, because it's not, it's not like, okay, it's just some people here and they're in this small town. We're all connected. I mean, the body of Christ is united. And it's fun also that, you just show up in some place you've never been before. You're not familiar with any of the surroundings, and you walk into a building you've never been in, that you don't even know where the bathroom is yet, and you meet people you've never met, and then you find that connection,
Mhm.
because that's how God intended it to be, that his family, the body of Christ, would be united that way, that we would know one another by our love. And that's all just part of the fun of it, I would say, and the great privilege that we have when we get to engage in God's plan this way.
Yeah, I think, in the first point, I was trying to emphasize seeing individual church transformation like you're talking about. In this third point, like you said, kind of zooming out to the macro level, I think for me, it's almost like an urgency thing. Like the more I see an individual churches encountering similar problems or, seeing similar challenges, one of the things that motivates me is, oh, we need big change.
Mm,
And um there's no such thing as big change without individual change. Like you don't get to just press a button and go, oh, all the churches are healthy now. Like
yeah.
it's the everyday work of lots of people
Hmm.
doing lots of good work to help churches turn around. And I think I talk about this a lot with churches because they'll ask me like, why do you like doing this? And I'll say like the number one thing that motivates me is, or one of the things I would say that motivates me is I see a cliff coming, and that cliff is a cliff around um, leadership development in particular. Like we're having more and more and more pastors retiring, and we do not have nearly enough young leaders that are trained and equipped to fill in and,
Hmm.
and to step up into these positions.
Yeah. The workers are
And
few.
yeah, the workers are few and the churches aren't healthy. And
Hmm.
so the churches themselves are unattractive to the limited candidates that exist because they're like, I don't want to step into this dumpster fire. And so to me, it's all connected. It's like
Yeah.
the churches have to get healthy. They have to get better at cultivating homegrown leaders who can rise up, and maybe we're not hiring some 20 something, 30 something out fresh out of seminary. Maybe we're cultivating a leader within our church who's maybe spent the last 20 years running a business or working in something, but we've been cultivating this person and they already have a love for our church and already know where we're going, and they're on board with our vision, and this is someone that we can elevate. And if he needs some extra theological training, we'll get him that. But we've got a homegrown leader, someone that we can really elevate and put in this. To me, the scope of this problem, AJ, is massive. There are hundreds of thousands of churches in this country. I don't know what the percentage on turnover is, but even if it's at, you know, 5% or 10% or something like that annually, I promise you, we do not have nearly enough people
Yeah.
who are coming out of seminaries.
Hmm.
Um, and when you're coming out of seminary, you're probably not equipped to take on a church anyway. Like you've got no real experience.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know that's like maybe that sounds like a rabbit trail, but for me, this is the thing that I see. Like the more I travel and work with churches across the country, the more I see a unified problem, and I see what we do as not the whole solution, but one part of it. And it is the thing that motivates me. It's why the Malthus Group is not the most expensive option. It's, it is not motivated by finances, clearly. We'd probably be better off personally if we were. Um, but what our heart is scope. It's why we're having this conversation about wanting to have more guides certified. It's like the
Hmm.
more people we can certify, if you'll work with even just one church a year, two churches a year, I mean, this can have a multiplication effect on
Yeah.
helping churches get healthy and make more disciples and grow up more leaders. Like this to
Hmm.
me, I want us to be part of the problem. That's maybe my personal dream and vision for the Malthus Group, is that we play a central role in helping churches be revitalized
Hmm.
and turn the tide of church decline in this country
Yeah.
and around the world.
Amen. I like you used the word urgency, and so urgency and micro macro. So yeah, I mean, there's an urgency, and churches should have an urgency of the gospel at the micro level, the urgency of one more person introducing one more person to Jesus. And then at our level, we're operating more on the macro, those moving from like the individual person up to the local church level, and having this urgency of like equipping them so that their people are equipped. I mean, our job is equipping the equippers, so that the gospel can go out in to its greatest extent from wherever that center point is, that Jerusalem center point. Um, that's that's what's fun. That's what's exciting. And that's where that sense of urgency is, because there is such a need. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So if
yeah,
that's a
man.
shared passion of yours, you might like, in particular, our approach to consulting or to guiding churches through this process. Our approach is geared more towards quantity. We have an intentionally pretty quick process because we're not trying to milk church. I mean, I'm not trying to disparage anybody else in this space. I'm really not, truly. And there are good reasons for going slow, and in certain situations, we even recommend going slow. So I'm not saying that, but we do have, I would say, one of our side sort of values is just urgency of the problem. Like, how many churches can we help
Mm-hmm.
um, as quickly as possible? Because the scope of the problem is that big.
Mm-hmm.
And there are more churches that need help than there are people to help them. And so if you sense that and you go, I want to be part of the solution, you know, this kind of work might be something that you would enjoy.
Yeah. I think that's part of the 30,000 foot view. And we literally have that, Scott. I mean, you and I sit window seat as frequently as we can. And you look out at the world below and you fly over cities and you look at the vastness of the cities. And even when they're not big, they're the sheer numbers that are out there, there's so much. The earth is so big, and and the people, you just look down and you're like, look at this city, and how many churches are there? I don't know. I mean, I can't spot them from the air, but the majority of the rooftops I'm seeing are not churches. But look at all the people down there, so when you're down at ground level and you drive around, you're like, there's a church, depending on where you are in the world. Maybe you rarely see that. In other parts, you're like, are they on every single corner? Even in those, church dense places, the number is not there for, proportionally to reach people with the gospel. And we prove this every single time we're the church. In the United States, we pull data, easily findable data, that shows usually the vast majority of people don't know the Lord. And so no matter where you are in the world, I guarantee you there's work to be done. And when you get up in a plane and you fly over the cities and you look down, you're like, yeah, there is a huge work to be done.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, man, you gotta
You
keep
also
that.
fly over this country and go, we have a lot of places to build more cities. So,
Don't let anyone tell you overpopulation
yeah, don't
is
tell, don't,
is
no, yeah, don't
reaching a
believe
limit.
it's overcrowded. It's not.
Yeah.
We got lots of room to grow.
Yeah. More people need to get up in airplanes and look at the earth from a higher perspective. No
Yeah,
doubt about it.
get a different view.
Yeah, get
Okay,
a
so
different view.
let's maybe get into the one reason why you shouldn't. So maybe up to this point you're like, wow, that sounds great.
This is a sweet gig.
Sweet gig. So let's get into the one reason you shouldn't,
Yeah.
which we've got some subpoints beneath that, but
Yeah. You want to know why you should not do this? We'll tell you. It's hard. It
Mhm.
is hard. Uh, as great as all of the things are that we just talked about, this is not an easy thing to do. So yeah, you've got a few subpoints here, Scott. The first one is that, there are misconceptions about how easy it is. And again, we just mentioned how churches are unique. They're not vastly different from one another, but you've got to navigate those things, every single time. There's going to be things that you have to try to figure out, help them, problems you have to help them solve. But to work independently as a guide, a Malfirst Group certified guide is in all effects an independent consultant. You are self-employed, um, and you got to deal with the things that it takes to be able to build relationships with churches, to talk with them about a process, to help them um, with enough information to make the right decision for them, be that with
Mhm.
you or with somebody else, or nothing at all, or a lot of things. But that takes time. So this is not a turn a switch and look, I've got a business happening here. It is not easy to build those relationships, and a lot of our guides will tell you that. We our team has people with varying levels of experience, and some of them are full-time in consulting, and they consult in different aspects of churches. Others have just been in full-time ministry, and depending on your personality and the your skills in networking and maintaining relationships and building relationships, your results may vary. So, I
Your
think
results will vary. Yeah.
will certainly vary. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to be ready to put the time in and the work to build relationships. That's what Scott and I do. And
Yeah.
they're not all things that end up happening.
Mm-mm.
The majority of the time you're working on building relationships with people you will not end up doing business with. That's the reality also. Um, but you also never know when they might come back around. We've had conversations that go years later, before, and I think God is sovereign in all things, and I think His timing has to be right, for them to go. You know what? It's just I kind of feel like now is the time for this to happen. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of relationship
Yeah.
building and a lot of patience.
I think that the misconception is that people will go, oh, it's easy. I'm going to go through the certification process. And then, yeah, like you said, I'm just going to turn the spigot on and I'm going to have all of these opportunities for working with churches. And that's not reality. Reality is most churches, I mean, just think about, I mean, if you've been in ministry, you know this. Most church boards are going to go, I think we can fix our own problems. Especially in America, it, there's this whole self-reliance,
Hmm.
pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. We don't want to spend money to bring someone in to help us. Maybe you're gonna have people on your board, on the boards of these churches that have experience working with consultants in their own space, and so they're going to project their own experiences, good or bad, onto you, and whether or not you would be helpful, even though, I think what we do, it's why we avoid the word consultant when possible, because, we don't work very similarly to the way that business consulting works. There's some overlap, but there are some major differences too. So we try to clarify that. But and then the sales cycle, even in an optimistic scenario, the sales cycle is long. You're talking about you're going to start a conversation, and in a best case scenario, you're talking 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, that's fast.
Hmm.
That would be really fast. Sometimes and often it's 2 months, 3 months, 4 months of conversations. Then they agree to it. And then from that point, you're still probably a month, 2 months, 3 months away from being on site with them, and so just the time that it takes to build, for lack of a better term, a book of business where you go, okay, I'm, you know, for example, right now I'm personally scheduling out into May, June, July of this year, because I'm just booked between now and then, to get to a point where that's your situation, where I'm intaking conversations with churches, things that are close to becoming reality, mean they're going to be happening in the fall. Like I, I I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. That's I'd say it took me 2 years, 3 years to get to a point where that was close to my reality. The first year and a half or so that I was doing this work, it was slim pickings. It was really hard. I had some real doubts about whether or not this was the thing I should be doing and if it
Hmm.
made real financial sense for me to be doing this. So, I would caution you, if you think that I can just hop into this, I can switch gears. You can't. You definitely can't. You need a plan. So if you have a business that you're in, you should stay in that business while you're building this ministry. If you have a ministry position, you should stay in that ministry position until you've really built this up and you feel like you've got a good groove and can count on it. You should not quit your job and do this. You just I'm telling you, you should not do that. That would not be wise.
Yeah.
I mean, the people who can do this full time, I'm just trying to be really straight with you. The people who can do this kind of work full time are probably in the I'm just making a guess, AJ, but I'm going to say top 10% of church consultants in the US can make a living doing it full time. And 90% cannot. They need some other supplemental income, or they need donor support if they're functioning like a ministry or something like that. They're to be able to work with churches and bring in enough of an income to live.
Yeah.
You're in the top 10% if you can do that effectively.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean don't do it at all, because I mean, a lot of people, have a level of success as a, I hate the term side hustle,
But
as another
bivocationally,
side,
they've got another job and they're
bivocational
doing
ministry. Yeah. And we have a lot of people that, either on the team or that we know, where the leadership of their church are like, hey, this would be a good use of your time. And we want
right.
you to use the skills that you have to bless other churches in this way. And so you
Right.
could
And it
be,
also sharpens your skills in
yeah,
looking at your own church because it gives you
exactly.
an
Right.
outside
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, again, you don't need to, depending on what you're trying to do and what you feel called to do. Even doing this a few times a year, you're a pastor on staff at a church, and you're able to be away for a weekend, not having to preach a few times a year, and you cultivate, some relationships that you can do this. That is an excellent use of your gifting and skill sets,
Yep.
to be able to bless, again, having that macro view to bless other churches that way. Um,
I'm trying to, I guess I just wanted to emphasize, I'm trying to discourage the person who thinks I can do this full time tomorrow.
yeah, right out of the
That's who
gate.
I'm trying to sort of,
Yeah,
not trying to be mean, but I am trying to throw a little bit of a wet blanket on it and just kind of give you some realistic expectations.
that's right. Yeah.
Could the Lord do a thing? And yeah, for sure. I'm just telling you that's not the normative experience.
Hmm.
Um, this kind of role, becoming a certified guide is, I think, ideal for what you're talking about. Someone who has a full-time job, their needs are being met, and you're wanting to do this to bless other families. I mean, other churches, and as a way to bring in a little bit of extra income for your family to, you know, um, or you're retired. I mean, you're retired from ministry, but you want to stay sharp. You still got a lot of energy. This is a
Hmm.
great thing to, um, kind of be legacy minded and pour into other churches now that you're
Hmm.
retired. This is also a really good role if you work in a denomination, or you're, a associational missionary, for a Baptist association or something like that. This is a really good tool to have in your tool belt to be able to more effectively serve the churches in your denomination
Hmm.
or in your denominational group. Um, we've got a few guides who are in that category, so their motivations aren't even financial at all. They just want to have our processes to be able to use with their churches. That's another kind of category of person that this is good for.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we kind of ended up segueing into the second point of the commitment level that is required. I think we have been kind of driving that home,
Mm.
that it's not a fast turn on, and it's not a fast turnover. That it does require a lot of commitment and dedication and patience and perseverance, to get started, and to continue to be prepared and ready uh, to work and build those relationships.
Yeah, so then let's just, because I think we have driven that home. Let's kind of wrap up with the last little bit of why this is hard, is you have to get used to the fact that, and this is really hard for ministry people. Okay, like if your whole world has been ministry, and that's the background I came out of. I worked for 15 years in ministry, in staff, church staff ministry, in a variety of roles before I started doing this. And having to, there's an element of this that's kind of businessy. And I just don't love that
Yeah.
part of it. It's not
Hmm.
my DNA. I'm not a businessman. Like it's just not who I am. And I know a lot of you listening, that's not you either.
Hmm.
And so, um, learning that there's a part of that, the business side of ministry is a little bit hard. And so when you have these conversations with churches, you're having this heartfelt conversation with them, but you have to realize that if they're exploring this kind of help, they're probably talking to two or three other organizations, also, and just knowing that that's part of it, and having the confidence to be able to share, here's how our process, you know, is beneficial. Here's what's different between us and working with fill in the blank unnamed other group. um y- you know being able to speak confidently about that, and then on the other end of that, just being able to trust God's sovereignty and go, if it wasn't a good fit, it wasn't meant for me to work with them, and that's okay. And understanding that the people who are technically competition aren't competition.
Hmm.
They're like keeping that macro level perspective of, they love Jesus, they love churches, they want to serve the church, and this church felt like this was a better fit for them and
Yeah.
for their culture and for what they
Hmm.
need.
Yeah.
And just going, all right, this is good. That the church is getting help is the thing that matters,
Right.
not who gave it to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the same time, not also being able to advocate for yourself and go, hey, here's why I think our process is really good. It's being able to balance those things. I think
Hmm.
that's hard. I don't know. It was hard for me. Maybe it's not hard for other people, but it was hard for me.
Yeah. No, I think, when I think when your heart is in the right place, you have the right attitude about it. I think you should feel a little bit of that tension. Of if yeah, I think if you go in there completely carefree, guilt-free, like, hey, I'm good and it costs this much, that
Yep.
I don't see you being long-term successful. So I think it's healthy to have that internal tension of, oh gosh, I really want to help them, and I hate that I even have to charge for this. Scott, you and I both feel that way frequently, like, I wish we could just do this for free, which is why, that's what we work to do internationally, through donor support. But um,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's not completely different from any other position in the church in which it's completely reasonable to expect compensation. I mean, you don't look at your lead pastor position, and come to the church like, all right, so you want me to preach every week? That's going to be about $1,500 a week on that. I mean, it's compensation for work in the ministry, and consulting is the same way. And we want to add value to the church, and you have to expect fair compensation. But yeah, this point was about navigating competition. We met with a quote unquote competitor once, because we were sort of collaborating with a church group, and they used the term. I'm sure they didn't coin the term, but they used the term collabetition. And I think, again, kind of at that macro level, that's what it is. If your heart is for the Church of Jesus globally, and people are trying to use their gifting and their skills and talents to build the church, then we are, at the end of the day, all on the same team. And I think if you believe in God's sovereignty,
Mhm.
then you don't take that personally whenever the church makes another choice and they go a
Yeah.
different way. Um,
And
I,
and I'd have to really think hard about it. Like, I mean, maybe if you were to ask me very specifically, I could think of an instance where I wouldn't agree with this, but I think nearly universally, I would say I would, and maybe I'm naive, AJ, so maybe this isn't true, but I think generally speaking, anybody who's working in this space has the right intention. You know what I mean? So you shouldn't feel bad when they work with someone else. Like I think that they're working with someone who is operating in good faith and has a heart for the church. You
Yeah.
know, okay. I, I I can't think. I can maybe think. Generally speaking, I can't think of people where I would go. They're in it for the wrong reason. I think that that's not the case,
Hmm.
and you have to
Yeah.
just kind of just trust that and keep that
Well,
attitude.
to be perfectly honest, there's been one or two where I
I'm
kind of
not
wished
saying
that they had making another that I wasn't the one that they had chosen. I kind of wish you didn't ask me to come and do this, but yeah, those are rare.
yeah, yep. So I think, yeah, generally speaking, everyone who's doing this work is doing it with a good heart and in good faith, and you've got to trust that because it isn't your place to judge that anyway. Like only the Lord knows someone's motivations for doing something anyway. And so if
Yeah.
the church works with someone else, you just go, the Lord knows, and that's a good thing. But bottom line, the reason why you shouldn't become a church consultant is it's really hard. It's hard work. The work itself is hard. It can be tiring. Um, you know, getting churches to work with you takes a long time and it's hard and there's some negotiation there and you maybe have to do things you're not used to doing, especially if you come from a ministry background. For all of those reasons, I would discourage you from doing it if if the things that we said at the front don't really resonate with you. But if you heard all the reasons why you should, and you go, man, I am entrepreneurial. I do want to see churches transform. I do want to have a deepened love and appreciation for the church at the macro level. If those things like you have felt your heart soaring, then for me, it didn't matter that it's hard. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm pushing through that. Um, and so maybe just to kind of put a bow on this episode, um, that's what I would say. The the resonance of the reasons why has to sort of outweigh how hard it really is. And if that's you and you're hearing this, I would encourage you to go to malfersgroup.com/certification, learn how you can get access to our toolbox and how we work with churches. And join us in Tennessee in April and get certified. Start doing the work.
Or in a future date. We do
Yeah,
have
we have two other dates
we've
later in
got
the year.
three happening this year, at, kind of spaced out a little bit. And yeah, we're always looking to grow our team because as we said, the world is a big place. The harvest is plentiful, the workers are few, and we need you. God has you set aside for a good work. And if you feel that in your heart, then we want to talk to you. So yeah, go to malfersgroup.com/certification. There's an entry point there that you can make a reach out to us, and then we can reach back out to you and start this conversation about what it looks like and how it could be hopefully a good fit for you.
Yep.
This has
And
been
just to encourage you, if you're wondering, there's details on certification process and fees and all of that. But just as a general note, we've built this intentionally for you to recoup your full investment in the certification process more than that by working with your first church. So again, we have costs associated with the certification, so there's a fee associated with that, but our heart's not financial. So you'll recoup. We want you to recoup your investment in that after you work with your first church. So that being said, this episode is what are we at?
228.
228. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can read the show notes, malfersgroup.com/228. And please go to malfersgroup.com/certification if you're interested in learning all the details about the process and seeing all the dates, and fill out that phase 1 application is what's at the bottom of that page. And then we screen those, and then you would be sent kind of a link to take the next step and fill out a kind of a phase 2 application.
There you go. We'll be looking forward to meeting you and having that conversation. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.